4 years after her husband's untimely death, Clara is finally ready to embrace happiness again with a new love. Just a week before her wedding in the idyllic hills of Tuscany, a mysterious email arrives sent from the account of her late husband. As the past resurfaces with chilling force, Clara must decide, will she follow her heart or the warning from beyond the grave? Before we dive into the story, don't forget to click subscribe and let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. 4 years after the tragedy that claimed her husband Pierre, Clara, a Parisian, finally felt the warmth of love once more. She was preparing to exchange vows with Hans, a prominent German businessman who had successfully filled the void in her heart. Their wedding was scheduled to take place in a beautiful villa in the Tuscan countryside, Italy, in just 1 week. However, the newfound tranquility she had just experienced was shattered by a mysterious email notification. Upon seeing the sender's name, Clara's heart pounded. Pierre Dubois, the name of her deceased husband? Her breath caught in her throat, as if an invisible hand was choking her. This must be a cruel joke, she thought, but a mix of curiosity and fear compelled her to open the email. The email's content was brief but devastating. Clara, my death was no accident. He knows. He did this. Don't marry him. Nothing else was written, just 3 lines that shook Clara's world. Tears streamed down her face, not just from grief, but from confusion and anger. She reread it countless times, searching for loopholes, for signs that it was just a trick. Yet, the writing style and the reference to he felt so intimate, so directly pointing to Hans. For the past 4 years, Clara had lived believing that Pierre's death was a tragic accident due to brake failure on a mountain road during one of Pierre's business trips. The police had investigated, and everything pointed to that conclusion. The only person who never accepted that explanation was Antoine, Pierre's younger brother, a private investigator based in Brussels. Antoine had always insisted something was amiss. He often visited her, showing strange articles, telling conspiracy theories about Pierre's business rivals, and even vaguely hinting at irregularities concerning Hans, who had been Pierre's business colleague at the time. Clara had always dismissed him, believing Antoine was too obsessed with the past and couldn't move on. Pierre's at peace, Antoine. Let him rest, Clara would say whenever Antoine brought up the topic. They had even had a fierce argument, which led to them rarely speaking in recent months. Now that emails seemed to echo all of Antoine's warnings. Doubt began to gnaw at her soul. Hans? Impossible. Hans was gentle, loving, and had always supported her through difficult times. He was too good, but the email from Pierre. Tears mixed with cold sweat beaded on Clara's temples. Without a second thought, driven by an irresistible instinct, Clara grabbed her phone. She immediately called Inspector Moreau, a senior detective in the local police force who had handled Pierre's case 4 years ago. With a trembling voice, she told him about the mysterious email. Moreau, though sounding skeptical, promised to investigate. This could be a cruel hoax, Madame Dubois, or someone trying to harm you. But we will look into it. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. Every image of Hans in her mind felt terrifying. His smile, his touch, their laughter together, everything now seemed deceptive. The next day, Hans came to visit her in Paris to sort out some wedding details. Clara tried to hide her apprehension, but her gaze couldn't leave Hans, trying to find a crack, searching for hidden signs of malice. Hans sensed the tension. "What's wrong, Clara?" "You seem uneasy?" Hans asked, looking at her with concern. Clara lied, just wedding preparation stress, so much to do. Hans nodded, trying to comfort her, and Clara felt an urge to pull away. Days passed in suffocating tension. Inspector Moreau had not found anything significant. The email sender's IP address traced back to a public server in Lisbon, Portugal, often used to conceal identities. "It's very difficult to trace the sender, Madame Dubois. This might just be an attempt to make you doubt," Moreau said over the phone. Clara began to think that perhaps Antoine was right. He had been fighting alone all this time. She decided to call Antoine. His voice sounded weary, but there was a faint note of bitter satisfaction when Clara told him about the email. "I told you, Clara, something isn't right. I knew Hans was part of it. Antoine stated firmly. I have some theories, but I need solid proof. I'll come to Paris tomorrow. Antoine arrived the next day, bringing a laptop full of data and documents. He showed Clara how Hans, months before Pierre's death, had secretly bought a majority stake in a small company that was a key supplier to Pierre's firm. If Pierre died, Hans would have full control over the supply chain. This is his motive, Clara, Antoine explained, pointing to complex graphs on his screen. He also altered some of Pierre's financial reports to make it look like Pierre was in major financial trouble. Although these were all clues, they weren't direct evidence. Clara still needed something concrete. Then Antoine showed her a phone conversation recording he had obtained from an informant between Hans and an unknown person. Hans's voice was faintly audible, mentioning the accident, and no one will ever know. However, the poor audio quality made the recording not strong enough as legal evidence. Time continued to tick by. The wedding day drew nearer. Clara felt like she was walking a tightrope over a chasm. She loved Hans, or at least she believed she did. But Pierre's shadow and the accusations hanging in the air made her unable to trust anyone anymore. On the night before the wedding, as Clara was trying on her wedding dress in the hotel room, a white envelope was slipped under her door. No sender's name. Inside, there was a small USB drive and a handwritten note. The proof is here. Find the truth. With trembling hands, Clara inserted the USB drive into her laptop. There was one video file. When she played it, the screen showed a blurry recording from a surveillance camera in a small car repair shop on the outskirts of town. The date of the recording was a few days before Pierre's death. And there, in the footage, was Hans. He was talking to a mechanic, handing over some money, and pointing to the underside of Pierre's car, specifically to the brake system. The mechanic nodded, took the money, and began tampering with the brakes. The video wasn't perfectly clear, but Hans's actions and his focus on Pierre's car brakes were undeniable. There were a few seconds where Hans and the mechanic exchanged meaningful glances. Tears soaked Clara's face. This was it. The proof Antoine had been searching for. The proof that would shatter her life, but also free her from the lies. She immediately called Antoine, her voice choked with sobs. Antoine, I have the proof. Hans, he really did it. Antoine arrived shortly after. He took the USB drive, and his expression morphed into a mix of sorrow and bitter satisfaction. I suspected it, Antoine whispered, his eyes welling up. Now we can prove everything? The next morning, instead of walking down the aisle, Clara and Antoine handed the video evidence to Inspector Moreau. With undeniable proof, Hans was arrested just before he could head to the wedding venue. The scandal erupted across Europe, shaking the business and social worlds. Then Clara remembered the envelope. Who sent it? As she turned the envelope over, she saw an old postage stamp from Bruges, Belgium, a familiar city, Antoine's hometown. And then she saw the handwriting on the note. The handwriting, it was a little familiar. Clara looked at Antoine, who was sitting on the sofa, his gaze blank, fixated on the news report on television about Hans's arrest. Antoine, Clara began, her voice soft. That email and this envelope, who sent them? Antoine looked up, his gaze meeting Clara's. There was a faint, sad, yet relieved smile on his lips. I sent the email, Clara, in Pierre's name. I knew it was the only way to make you listen. I knew you would never believe me if I told you directly, Antoine replied, his voice hoarse. And the envelope? That was from a former colleague of Pierre's in Belgium. He always felt something was off with Hans and kept that recording as a backup, just in case. I finally managed to convince him to give it to me last night. I wanted you to find it, Clara. I wanted you to discover the truth yourself. Clara looked at Antoine, tears welling up again. Not tears of sadness anymore, but tears of understanding, gratitude. All this time, Antoine had not only been trying to prove the truth for his brother, but also to protect her. He was the true hero in this tragic story.